Okay, hi, this is Ronnie again at the Woodstock Fruit Festival, and I've got another interview, and this is with Andrew Perlot.
Hey Ronnie.
How are you, Andrew?
I'm doing great.
Awesome. And basically what I want to first find out is, what is your backstory for how you ended up here at the Woodstock Fruit Festival?
I started eating a raw diet. Well, I started experimenting when I was in college. I was suffering from a really bad intestinal disease called colitis, and it was pretty much destroying my life, and the doctor told me that there was no cure, that I would pretty much be stuck with it for the rest of my life, but, you know, he could offer me drugs to help with some of the symptoms, and I didn't really believe that, and so this was around late 2004, early 2005, and I found a little pamphlet by Dr. Doug Graham. It was called Grain Damage, and this was before 80-10-10 came out, and it suggested, you know, hey, maybe the problem is the grains, the starches that you're eating, because by that point I was already eating a vegan diet.
Right.
And I cut them out, and I actually, believe it or not, because my intestines were so messed up, I couldn't really handle a lot of variety of fruit. I couldn't handle vegetables, so I literally just ate bananas for about 2 months.
Okay.
And by the end of those 2 months, my symptoms of colitis had gone away, and I was feeling better than I ever had. Yeah. I was feeling amazing, and I was just eating bananas. So, you know, so that was around 2005 when I first did that experiment, and I spent a few years trying to do, maybe I'll eat a little cooked food, but I found I never could feel as well as I did eating all raw. So by 2007, I decided, you know, it wasn't for me, I'm just going to eat all raw, and you know, there weren't very many raw foodists around at that time, particularly in 2005. Like, I didn't know, Doug Graham told me at that time, like, you know, there might have been a couple dozen in the world at that point. And so I didn't feel like there was much community around, but it was something that I wanted. So I unfortunately missed the first, I don't know if I missed the first two or just the first one, but because I was living in Southeast Asia, I didn't get to come to the first original Woodstocks. But I really love the idea, and I love the people here. You watch the people who are sick, and they start eating this way, and just being outside in the fresh air, and they start to come alive. And it's just really nice to watch. It's nice to be around people who share your values, who kind of have a similar vision of what the world should be like. And that's why I'm here, because it's awesome.
And have you gone on to, do you help people with colitis and other things like that, and have you had success with that?
Yeah, I started a website called rawfoodhealth.net in 2008 because I was just so disgusted with the treatment I got from my doctor, who, when I showed him my food log and I was like, hey, look, I've got my calendar here and this is what I ate, and look, you can see the correlation. When I eat these foods, you know, my colitis gets worse. And he was like, oh, there's no correlation with diet. It has nothing to do with diet, you know, but it's your intestinal system. How is that? Nope, no correlation. And so just getting that treatment, I was so disgusted, so I created rawfoodhealth.net just to kind of spread the information. And originally it was a hobby, but it became really popular, and I turned it into a business. So that's been my full-time business since 2010. So I do coaching with people. I've written a number of books. The relevant one for intestinal issues is the Raw Food Digestive Tune-Up. Yep. And so, yeah, that's how I make my living as well.
Awesome. You're kind of famous or infamous maybe in this community for one stunt that you did last year. You were doing it around about the time that Woodstock was happening last year. You basically kind of disproved the prevalent idea that it's impossible to get to put on weight, fat on a fruit diet, a fruit-based diet. So what inspired you to do that, and what's been the results from that?
So it was really interesting because I had never really been a YouTube kind of guy. I was trained as a writer, a newspaper reporter, so I'm good with data, I'm good with facts, I'm good with writing and research, but YouTube has generally been about opinions that this seems strange, and so I would have these people coming to me for coaching help, like, you know, I gained 10 pounds eating this way, or 15 pounds, and like, it's been 6 months, when is the weight going to come off? And I'd be like, what are they talking about? Why would they think they can eat more and lose less? And, you know, I was aware that there was this, this idea on YouTube, like, you know, it's okay to stuff yourself. If you're a sedentary 80-year-old woman, 3,000 calories a day is just fine. No, you know, it'll be great. Just wait it out down the road. You'll get slim. And I just saw person after person after person getting fat on this advice, or, you know, at least putting on more weight than they wanted. And I was just like, you know, this is ridiculous. And so I'm like, well, maybe I'll just start doing some YouTube videos. And I had done a few years back, but I was like, maybe I'll just become more serious about it. And so that was one of my earlier efforts, in just chronicling, hey, look, I'm eating a low-fat, raw vegan diet. My calories is fruit. And instead of stopping eating when I am reasonably satiated, which is what I had done to maintain my body weight for many years, I'm just going to stuff myself until I have, I just have zero desire to eat anymore. Every day, just stuff it until I'm full, shove it down, because that's what you hear about. You know, you got to cram down those calories, the carb up, man. And so I did that experiment, and I went from eating 2,000 to 3,000 calories a day, or on occasion I'd go over 3,000 if I was really physically active, to...
And just to clarify, that was all raw 8-10-10?
Yeah, I'd been doing it for years. I didn't change anything when I started my experiment. So just, you know, eating more calories. I started eating, you know, 3,000 to 4,000 and sometimes more than that. And I started putting on weight just really quickly. And this isn't a surprise. I was overweight in my youth. I was technically obese. So I knew I could gain weight, and I had done it before, but it's just like, well, watch me demonstrate it. And so I went from 175 pounds at the beginning last year, and by the time I was done, which was 75 days later, I was 190.
Right.
So I did it all with eating too much fruit. And so I just wanted to make a point, and I think it really did drive home that message.
Yeah, and definitely did. What you were accused of, though, was the idea that because you'd fasted before, that you'd maybe that had created some kind of damage. I've heard about this metabolic damage idea. What's your response to that? What does that mean? Does it mean anything? And fasting in general, is it a good thing, a bad thing?
Okay, well, first off, I did not fast to lose weight, which has been the accusation. I fasted because I had really messed up intestines, and my symptoms went away when I started eating a raw diet, but I had long noticed that my digestive strength was not as robust as people who had never had that condition, and so I wanted to see if a long-term water fast, I did 26 days, would help that, and indeed it did. I now can eat more things that would have just destroyed me before, like cruciferous vegetables. I can eat a little of those, and just generally I digest things better, and so it was a good idea in my opinion. So I finished my fast up in January, and 2 months later, by March, I think I had stabilized at 175 pounds after dipping down to 152, most of that being water weight loss, but also some fat loss as well. So I just, my weight was stabilized there, 175 pounds for 2.5 months before I started this experiment. It never occurred to me at the time that this would be an accusation, because in my opinion, the fasting had just been something I did and I was done and I was great. Now let's move on to trying something else. And so people have tried to make that connection. I don't think there is one. And if we examine the science, there's actually good science on this, because it is true that there is a small but not huge slowdown of metabolism when you starve yourself, and we see this in eating disorders.
Right.
And studies have been done to see what kind of effect those starvation diets have on metabolism. So assuming that I did slow down my metabolism, the studies that I've seen have all showed that certainly within 2 weeks, whatever slowdown occurred is over. Your body is not dumb. It doesn't take forever to adjust. It will rapidly uptick if you start feeding it a reasonable amount of food. And just to be clear, I don't suggest people go on starvation diets. I'm not a fan. Eat enough calories to fuel yourself. Just don't eat more than you need and get fat. A lot of people don't have to worry about that. Some people can eat as much as they want and just stop. But I happen to not be one of them, and I know a lot of other people are not. So I just, trying to make that point.
What I wanted to go on from there is, I know that your information's well researched. You've said you're good with the data and stuff like that. I want to know, is there any other prevalent ideas, myths, misconceptions that are going on in the raw food community today, even within 80-10-10, that you see, that you maybe have even heard at the festival, or that you wouldn't agree with, or that you feel is incorrect information?
Well, I mean, if we were to poll people here about their beliefs on subjects, I think I would find a lot to disagree with I was sitting at dinner the other night and hearing about the glories of juice fasting, which is a practice I'm not a huge fan of. But there's lots of things like that. But I think that if we examine what has gone wrong in humanity's diet before the modern era when supplementation of processed foods began, I think that there's reason to be worried because we've given up those supplemented foods. And it is true that if we eat food that's grown in sufficiently nutritious soil, we're going to be fine. But I'm not convinced that we are.
Right.
So it kind of becomes, is there a benefit here? And also, okay, we know you can get enough vitamin D from the sun. There's no question. We have millions of years of evolution to prove it. The question is the modern person willing to alter their lifestyle enough to get that sunshine?
Right.
And so I think that's a really worthwhile question that shouldn't be brushed off as just get some sunshine, because you can become vitamin D deficient. It's not that hard. So, I think we need to really consider those and perhaps make more of an emphasis to make sure that people understand, alter your life significantly to make that a priority, or perhaps supplementation is a lesser evil than suffering these deficiencies.
Right. Cool. So, what's your vision of the future with this lifestyle, with your own path? Where do you want to end up being? How do you want to integrate this more into your life? Where do you see this community going?
I think we could probably talk for hours on this subject,
sure.
But just for instance, take a drive down a city street or a suburban street and look at a grassy median. It's filled with grass, or it's got a shade tree that's not producing any food. Why isn't that growing fruit?
Right.
So I actually kind of hoping long term that I can start doing some work, just working on the local level to plant some fruit trees for the community. That's something I've really enjoyed doing. I'm still working on the logistics of it, but I really think that, for instance, there's a really good charity out there. It's called the Fruit Tree Planting Foundation. I donate to it a lot. They go around, they plant fruit trees in schools and in parks and wherever, and those start feeding people. And considering the poverty that exists in the United States and elsewhere in the world, and we really need to get free food. Why plant shade trees when you can feed people? Better food than they can get at the grocery store. So I think that's really important. I think that when I started eating this way, within a couple years, I had realized that it had really changed the way I thought about things, that I viewed the world a different way, and I was more emotionally open, and I see that as a good sign. And just talking to people here who have been eating this way for a while, they'll tell you the same thing. They feel more open, they feel emotions deeper, but yet they're more stable. And in a world of turmoil that we live in with wars and all these problems going on, I think that would be amazing if we could get more people just being more emotionally stable. In depression, you don't even have to be a raw foodist, but look at the science on veganism and depression. You just put someone on a vegan diet, they have fewer negative thoughts. It's some really interesting stuff.
Would you like to live in a community like this, or what's your thoughts on that kind of thing?
You mean like a community where there were a lot of people around, where they ate? Yeah. I've lived with friends who were raw foodists, and that was a great experience. I have met raw foodists who, I didn't get along with. And so I'm not necessarily saying that, it's a universal thing, everything's going to be wonderful when you're a raw foodist, because clearly that's not the case. But I love the idea in theory, and I think that some model would work. Personally, I'm not a fan of, a commune-style situation. I've just seen that fail too many times. I'm not interested, but certainly living together with awesome people who eat a raw diet is something that is worth people's time to investigate. I love doing it.
Cool. So if people want to reach out to you and find out more about you, where can they do that?
My website is raw-food-health.net, and I have a YouTube channel. Actually, I think it might be. If you just type Andrew Perlot into YouTube, I think you'll probably get some of my videos and find my channel that way. I have a mailing list, send out emails about eating a raw food diet, thriving. You can check out my books, The Raw Food Digestive Tune-Up, Savory Raw Dressings and Sauces is just sauces and dressings for salads, and the Raw Food Weight Loss and Vitality is my main book, How to Eat a Raw Diet, what are some of the downfalls and pitfalls that people get into. So
awesome, man. Thanks for speaking to me.
You're welcome.
Yep, so like, share and subscribe to this channel, these videos, and check out Andrew's stuff, rawfoodhealth.net. Thank you.